Well, good morning, almost afternoon. My name is Amy Robak. I work with Centrasota Cooperative. Been there since 2015 roughly. And I'm going to do a quick overview about who Centrasota is, why are we involved in the conservation space, and some of the different projects we've accomplished over the last few years pertaining to soil health. So for those of you that don't know how Centrasota began, we began in 1877 when we were a milk and butter company with Land O'Lakes. And then we were the first in 1922 to produce Land O'Lakes sweet cream butter. And then in the 1940s, we became Centrasota Cooperative, and we have grown since then. So our vision is to improve lives and create a more vibrant future for farmers, families, and communities in central Minnesota. And you can kind of see, just not working there, our trade territory here, cover about 300,000 acres across central Minnesota. We have agronomy, energy, feed, fuel, country stores, lawn care, we put up Christmas lights. So all sorts of fun stuff we do at the co-op. About 175 full-time employees, and of course we have our seasonal employees. We service alfalfa, corn, soybeans, small grains, edibles, potatoes, whole wide array of crops, and of course of all the wide array of animal agriculture. So a little bit about me. I was born in Foley, Minnesota, went to Foley High School, raised in Foley on the dairy farm. That's our farm right there when we still had milk cows. But I helped founded the Environmental Services Department. Kind of started off as an NRCS TSP certification, and that kind of got the ball rolling on our department. My focus is mostly on nutrient management. And then of course we help with cost share assistance and soil health. And so some of our team members within our organization is Rebecca Schubert. So she's sitting right there. She is our environmental specialist and she is our water expert. So anyone has irrigation questions, she is the gal. We have Colby Beeler. She's our conservation agronomist with a partnership with Morrison SWCD. And Andrew Lampert, he is our service manager and allows me to do all these crazy things. I thought this was quite interesting. I threw this in here. This is just a little bit of stats. So we are going into our 5th year of business structure, if you want to call it, at the co-op. So in 2022, we had about 72 clients look at nutrient management, about 45,000 acres across Minnesota, just because of the TSP certification. With Rebecca's business, she has about 11 clients, 33 probes, and I think in what, 2nd year into this, roughly. So pretty good. We hosted our first soil health events. We had about 150 producers come to those events. The 12 cover crop cost share projects, that was with Morrison County, with Colby, and the Soil and Water Conservation Partnership we have there. We have about 1,000 acres of cover crop designs. Again, that was with NRCS and Soil and Water with Morrison County. Of course, there's a bunch of money coming up into that area. We have 1,500 acres enrolled into the carbon markets as a co-op. And within Morrison County, we had 7 new egg water certifications. So why is an egg retail involved in conservation, right? Because I'll tell you right now, it's not a big money maker. So sustainability is at the forefront of our customers' demands. We know that. And we see it from the government, we see it from industry, we see it from producers, and we see it from consumers. It's in front of our faces all the time. So we need to start meeting our producers' needs as a co-op. No surprise, seed, chemical, and fertilizer are seeing compressed margins. We're seeing that year after year after year, we're not getting the margins like we used to. So how can we add farmer services or loyalty to the co-op? And of course, expanding our clientele with local public partnerships and companies. So this is an overview of our current partners. They're not all on here, but this is more focusing on conservation. SMC, Truterra, Nature Conservancy, Egg Water Quality Certification Program, CropX, Practical Farmers. We are involved in trying to do across the landscape to try to hit our conservation goals as a co-op. We recently became a Zimmerman manufacturing dealership, and of course Montague too for the equipment side of it. So the next little portion is just going to be about soil health basics. Really simple, right? Everyone might know this, but I thought it'd be good to remember it. So NRCS defines soil health as the continued capacity of a soil to function as a vital living ecosystem and sustain plants, animals, and humans. Pretty basic. This picture is actually up in Little Falls. So what functions would we like our soils to provide? Produce food, feed, fiber, biofuels, and medicine. Capture, filter, and store water. Cycle and recycle our nutrients in our soils. Resilience to drought, flood, and temperature extremes. And we know that's becoming, the climate's becoming a more and more bigger factor in this. Protecting plants from pathogens and stress. Detoxifying pollutants. And store carbon to moderate and release of gases. And resist erosive forces. So we're asking a lot of our soils to do this for us. So how do we begin to manage for soil health? Again, this is coming from USDA NRCS. 4 principles, sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 6, it just depends who you're talking about. But the 4 main principles is we got to minimize our disturbance, maximize our living roots, maximize soil cover, and maximize biodiversity. So that's why we hear about cover crops, reduced tillage, vertical tillage, strip till, no till. That's where all this stuff is coming because we're focusing back on the soil health principles. So this next portion is going to be looking at different projects that we've done over the past few years and from our experience as a co-op. If you want more information on this stuff, I'm just going to kind of give a high level overview of what we've done. So first off, why cover crops? They suppress weeds. They act as a mat for germinating. Weed crops for germination, reduce resistance. So reduces resistant herbicide weeds, increasing herbicide effectiveness, controls erosion. Obviously, we keep the topsoil in place, we increase our organic matter, and now we can hold on to our nutrients a lot better in the soil that our crops can use. Maintains land value, which is a big one. Cycles nutrients, retains and scavenges, reduce inputs. And I put could, because I'm not going to tell you that they are going to reduce your inputs, but they could reduce your potential for herbicide and fertilizer inputs over time. I will say I have not come across someone that has effectively reduced everything. I think I was asked this question the other day, just locally around here, I guess, that said, yeah, we cut all our fertilizer and chemical acids. I like this root system picture. It kind of shows, this is in feet, down to 15 feet. Some of our native prairie, plants, that's our landscape is a prairie, so it's important to look back at where our roots came from. Species differ. So of course we have grass, legumes, brassicas. Our grasses are for biomass, for tillering, for nitrogen scavengers. Legumes fix nitrogen, and of course our brassicas are great tubers for our compaction. I have a few listed here. And function, so I really like this one. So we have our grasses, we have our nitrogen scavengers, legumes, nitrogen sources, brassicas, scavengers, draws up the phosphorus. And of course, when we start mixing multi-species together, we get everything, and it starts a cycle, and we start to work as I guess a family, right, for the soil. Two most used cover crops that we've seen is of course seed or rye. It's the most common overwintering cover crop in the corn and soybean rotation. And then seeded by drill, broadcast with light incorporation. Kale. So kale is one that we started to use the last 2 years. And we throw it like in every single mix. And the reason we use it is because it's a cold tolerant brassica. It will not overwinter, which I have to say it has overwintered, but you can kill it pretty easy. It terminates at 14 degrees. That's why we use it up here. Nutrient scavenging. It has these great pencil-like tubers. So it's not your traditional turnip or radish. And the reason we like this is because we get 175,000 seeds per pound. So imagine 175,000 at a pound or 2 an acre out there across your field versus a radish at 34,000 seeds per pound. A producer is getting more for their value, essentially, with the kale. So that's why we use that a lot. Okay, projects. So when we first started this, of course, my background's in nutrient management and manure. We used a lot of winter rye, and I was like, okay, so let's take a look at manure systems, right? How does manure and cover crops play together? Little Falls, Upper Midwest Pumping kind of helped me with some of this, but you can see on these top ones is our low disturbance coulter and the knife. And the moral of the story, this is telling producers that we can throw a cover crop out there 5 days ahead of time, come in with our manure applicators, and then the cover crops. The other thing is a lot of these were seeded in October. You don't get a lot of growth out of them, but from the aspect of this certain producer, he wanted erosion control. That was his whole thing with it. So then I thought it'd be crazy. Let's explore, with interseeding. So this one was over by Royalton. You can see here's the pivot. There's 2 pivots on this particular field. The west side is where we threw our covers. The east side, we didn't have anything. Essentially, we were trying to start to fix this low area where he was seeing yield decreases time over time. It was kind of a failure and a learning experience. We interseeded at V8 to V9. It looked okay, but it was not what we wanted it to be, right? We realized that V8 and V9 is for a cash crop guy is too late. And you know, yeah, it wasn't a total fail, but it was a learning experience, right? And you can kind of see the other thing was we used a spinner spreader. We didn't use an airflow. And I think that's why we were seeing these concentrations, because the seed wasn't flying out like we thought it would, essentially. So we decided, let's do it again. Since we learned some stuff the first year. So this time we went over to Isanti County. So not too far away. Same mix, ryegrass, kale, turnips, clover. We seeded at V5 to V6. So we learned our lesson, seeded a little bit earlier. So these top ones are 16 days after application. These bottom ones are 72 days after application. We still use the spinner. That was a miscommunication between the co-op. It happens. But we were very pleasantly surprised. And there was some missing. You can kind of see in that picture. It's not like we thought it would be. You can kind of see it's okay. So I'm like, okay, this is a good start. Fall, the producer was just, he was just like, this is awesome. Because this is what it was looking like. And granted, it wasn't like this across the whole field where we got some not so much cover crop spread, but he was super, super happy with this. This particular field went 160 bushels an acre, and that was right on par what he's typically doing. So the cover crop really didn't take anything away from the overall yield.
Irrigated land or non-irrigated?
None. What we have learned with interseeding is we're going to cut out the clovers. For some reason, we cannot get clover to establish in their interseeding. I don't know if it's not enough sunlight. We've even used a heat tolerant clover. So I think we're going to back off the clover this coming year and see how this is working with brassicas and grasses.
Having a positive experience here with this spinner, would you still believe airflow would be a better method for?
Personally, yes, because like I said, not the whole field looked this great. You know, obviously we want to get a nice even spread essentially, but and I think as a co-op, and I don't want to speak for Centrasota, but I think we're gonna towards more of a an airflow type system and maybe potentially even drop tubes, because we're just getting more requests for this type of work. So then this one's a little unique. It actually turned into an alternative forage project. So a lot of beef guys we work with, again, up in Little Falls. So this producer took off rye, and we're like, we're gonna throw a cover crop out there. And we're talking, this is like sugar sand. Like just, there's nothing to it. And this is dry land, this is not irrigated, keep that in mind. So we went with Piper sedan gas, kale, clover, and forage peas. This was my mistake, and this was Saddle Butte Egg, Mr. TJ's mistake. We do not mix peas when you're gonna go through a drill. Makes it a little bit more difficult when you're using the drill, but it actually turned out really good. So 1 month after planting our clover, this does, I don't know, I can't get clover to grow. Piper sedan grass, forage peas, kale, like this is looking really good. And the producer's like, well, can I take this for forage? And we're like, well, heck yes. So this is October 4th. Again, this is dryland sand, no irrigation. It is a little bit yellow because we didn't throw any fertilizer out there because we didn't really think we're going to be taking it for forage. He cut this October 5th, round baled a week later because it started to rain. Of course, it didn't rain all summer long, and then it started raining. We cut hay, right? Typical. Over 24 acres, he got 85 4x5 bales. So in his mind, as an alternative forage, that was awesome because now he has additional forage for his cattle. And the cool thing was the cattle stopped eating mineral when they ate this blend. And I'm not a feed person, but all I know is looking at the sample, the digestibility at 30 hours was still significantly high. And we're thinking that animals are getting the minerals and the nutrients they need, so they didn't need the supplement. So kind of cool. So what about 2022? So we looked at this field, he no-tilled, just a basic, nothing fancy with his planter. This rye is overwintering. I just want to kind of show the roots of the rye. Again, sugar sand, no irrigation. The typical field average of the 24 acres is about 120 bushels an acre. His yield for 2022 was 147. So we did get more rainfall in 2022, but he does think the no-tilling and the cover crop definitely helped. That moisture in the soil did rain, so it just didn't go right through the profile. Because he was, you know, side by side, he said the cash crop was not wilting, so was able to hold that moisture on in between the rainfall events. So he was happy. I think he's gonna continue to do no-tilling into his covers. Okay, this just shows that when we look at alternative forages or cover crops, every year is different, right? 2022 or 2023, I should say, technically, seeded August 16th, so a little bit later than the first year. We adjusted our blend to put some spring oats in there. We had a hard frost, and the Piper sedan grass just said, I'm done, and died, and that's what he got for forage. So not as good as 2021 technically, but every year is different. So winter rye and radish. So this is another one of crazy ideas. Why don't we throw some radishes with our winter rye for our grain? So seeded on September 29th, and this was 2 months after planting, and you can see the radishes. They were huge. One thing is the rye looked really, really yellow, but we can say, okay, that was contributed because of the radishes, pulling up all that excess nitrogen from the soil profile and taking it away from the rye. So what happened in the spring? April 4th, the radishes were already decomposing, breaking down into the soil, releasing that nitrogen. And the producer cut back on his commercial fertilizer blend because we only contributed about 10 pounds of nitrogen coming from the rye because we had no idea. But even cutting back on our spring fertilizer blend, he still saw a 3 to 5 bushel increase when he threw the radishes in. Protein, I didn't ask him on protein, but to him, that was a win-win. Cutting back on a little bit of commercial fertilizer, helping the soil. So then, this project is from our own farm, so this is over in Benton County. I've been on my dad for years to try cover crops, and we decided let's try cover crops and let's try no-tilling right into it, like jump into it, right? We harvested the winter rye for forage on June 3rd. June 5th, we no-tilled an 08 soybean with a John Deere 7200, and yeah, we didn't have the greatest results. So the closing wheels, it did not close whatsoever. You can kind of see them popping up. We're like, okay, do we roll it or do we like, what do we do? Do we tear it up? Like, I'll just leave it. Yeah. And actually, oh, sorry. Try again. Technical difficulties.
There.
Oh, yep. It actually looks pretty good. Like, we were really happy. I was like, okay, so not so bad. Yield wise, yeah, about 25 bushels hit to it. But the one thing my dad said, and I think this is what sold him on it, was conventional tilled field right by the no-tilled field. Those periods of drought that we were seeing throughout the summer, this no-till field didn't show major signs of drought stress. And he won't admit it, but I'm pretty sure that's why he is going to keep going forward with this. And that's why he's invested in changing his planter over to no-till. So yield wasn't there, but he saw the drought was his selling factor, I think, on this. So last one here is a video. So this is over in Stearns County. So this is Upper Midwest Pumping. Yeah, I think so. It works. So this was done with a hydro liquid manure applicator drag line. 12-inch winter rye cover crop, injecting manure, and so it's that Coulter system. 13,000 gallons an acre. Now, with any sort of manure injection system, they have to pick up when they turn around. That's why we see a lot of this on the ends. But when you go into the field, within a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours, you can't see anything. I don't know how yield turned out on this one because he's not my producer. It's just Tim shared this with me, and he's like, it was really cool. He said, I loved going in the cover crop because no ruts. You just keep going, lift up, turn around, go back. And he really likes the hydro bar. So I know he has a couple different bars, but the hydro bar is his favorite when they do these things. So just thought I'd share that. Haney test. Okay, I'll go over this real quick. We've been working with the soil Haney test, in-field soil sampling, soil health analysis for the last few years. What can I tell you from it? I don't really know. I mean, that's the hard part, right? So we do have a handful of producers that we've been doing with this. 2 of them in particular, they're into their either 4th or 3rd year. Both from the Little Falls area, both on Lonely Pine Sands. So the one producer is sugar sand. This guy has a little bit more organic matter to his soil. So I was going through all this information. I'm like, okay, what have you seen anything from this? Because I have honestly no clue. One thing I did find interesting is, so when we work with producers, before they implement any sort of soil health system, we take baseline samples. So we take baseline pH tests, we do the infield assessments. What is our baseline? What does the field edge look like? That's been undisturbed, right? So we kind of get that baseline for that particular field. And one thing I've noticed with the CO2 burst and the soil health scores from our baseline for these particular producers is we improved. So, you know, he was at a 69 for CO2, 97, 87, 50, 58. And both of these producers implemented cover crops and reduced tillage, or no-till, I guess in this case. This producer will introduce no-till in 2023. So that's just kind of telling me that, okay, we're going in the right direction, because we're seeing some of these positive numbers increase, I guess, over time. So that's about all I can tell you about what we know about the Haiti test right now locally. I guess for the producers, they think this is great because it just shows numeric value on how they are improving on that particular field. So if you want more information, I have lots of data that I can share with you, but I don't necessarily know or can give you really good directions on it, but I have some data. And then just finishing up here, equipment. So I touched on a little bit, Precision Planting Dealer, Harvest International Egg Leader, Yeti, Martin Till, Mudsmith, and of course the Zimmerman Manufacturing dealer. So we're invested in all sorts of equipment. We have Nate Hood. He's amazing when it comes to this type of stuff. The cool thing is we actually have a demo strip till bar that producers can potentially utilize. So we just purchased it. I think we're still kind of formulating how we're going to go forward with it. But a producer could demo it for a day, see if they like it, and then invest in one if they wanted. And then Rebecca has her irrigation water management program. So everything from uniformity testing, variable rate probes, which is the CropX and the Centex that we have, irrigation water recommendations, and of course, supporting the NRCS irrigation water management plans. So, and Rebecca, if you guys have any questions, you can talk to her about that. Other than that, perfect. Half hour.
Do you have anyone in your that you are working with or that Centrasota is servicing that's doing roller crimping?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Roller crimping?
I have 2 customers up in Otter Tail County. They're to be roller crimping rye for you. We have another producer, I think he's had it on order for a while and hasn't gotten it yet. So I know the thing that I keep telling people with the roller crimping with the rye, for example, we have to get in that infusive stage or else you're not going to kill it. So I'll let you know when they get the roller crimper. So we start experimenting with it a little bit more, but you know, for the organic systems, for those 2 producers, you know, we're hoping that we can just totally cut off all those tillage passes of that light digger and just roller crimp the rye down and our stuff. Good to go. More to come.
I have another question here, but someone else is dying. So how many operators do you have right now that are planting soybeans into cereal rye?
More and more. I want to say we're maybe at that 20 to 30% mark. It's not a lot, but it's definitely the intro. I tell people that's the easy thing, right? If you want to do cereal rye and then just plant your soybeans into it, because we're not worried about nitrogen tie-up at that point or anything. So when I tell producers to start working with covers, if they want to do some no-tilling, start with that. And every producer is different. Some just want a cover crop out there and they want it to die over winter. Okay, that's fine. Let's start there. Obviously cover crops is a gateway drug. Because eventually you're gonna be like, oh, cool, well, now I don't have to spend an extra field to go across that field to work it out, can I just move into it? So. More and more are doing the no tilling the soybeans.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Amy.
Yep.